I get that things seem so untenable, but are you really going to move on from a guy just because he's unhappy? If Russ was maybe more Aaron Rodgers or just a different kind of personality where maybe the locker room all of a sudden and its opinions about the way things are get dramatically affected by his presence and his unhappiness, okay. I mean, that I could understand, but I just don't think that's in his character.
If he asks for and wants to play a certain style of football, and the answer from the Seahawks is no, and he says, then I'd prefer to play somewhere else, would you trade him? Because I think at that point I am investigating all of those things, and something like I outlined with that trade with Miami for Tua and 2 first-round picks, I'm much more interested in that. I'm thinking long and hard about something like that.
I'd think about it, but if this guy cares so much about his legacy, which he constantly brings up, then I think you challenge him. It's like, hey man, if you're gonna do it, then you got to do it here.
But that's a certain amount of I know what's best for you. I know what's best for you, and there's a limitation of how long that can last, because eventually the player's going to leave. Eventually his contract's going to run out.
But I don't even know if it's something about knowing what's best for you. It's, hey man, are you really going to sit out and not play? Really? Like I just don't, and because if that were the case, fine, then yikes, you're in a bad situation. But if this guy cares so much about his legacy and also always looking squeaky clean, then these things that I think people are thinking he might do aren't actually going to happen. So I guess what I'm saying is, if I'm the Seahawks, I'm calling his bluff, because I don't think there's any way he can force his way out of town. I don't. He can whine all he wants, but you know what? Like, he's under contract, so good luck, man.
You're going to bend his professionalism back around onto him?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, you signed the contract. If you wanted the ability to potentially change locations, especially with how testy the negotiations got, then maybe you should have looked for something similar to what we're seeing in the NBA, those shorter-term deals. And maybe your agent, I don't know, the baseball guy, should have remembered that there's a franchise tag and should have gotten you a franchise tag provision that means that the Seahawks can't give you one.
I get all of those points, Paul, and that is one. If he really wants something offensively that you don't want to do, like if that's at the core of this, I think I'm much more willing to trade him than I would be if he's just mad about not winning enough. But if at the core of this is the way they play, I think I'm much more willing. It doesn't mean I'm going to do it, and I'm certainly not going to do it for the poo-poo platter from Chicago. But I'm much more, if this is really about the style of play and him not liking the overall structure that Pete Carroll puts in place, I'm much more willing to trade him.
And I understand that, but for him to not embrace the style, that's one thing. He would have to sabotage the style.
You're gonna have you'll take the unenthusiastic, and I'm gonna count on that.
Yeah,
Russ doesn't have it in him. Russ doesn't have it in him to dog it.
Honestly, yeah, I feel that way. Russ, and you know what? I'll give Russ respect for this. Russ isn't like that James Harden who did what he did, where he's just like absent-mindedly lobbing passes to John Wall with no effort and legitimately mailing it in on the court. Russ wouldn't do that.